Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Better Future Starts Here, a live weekly show brought to you by the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. American SPCC is dedicated to improving the lives of children, families, parents, and caregivers. We are America's voice for children, bringing you the industry experts to deliver the perspective, the knowledge, and the support to empower children and families so that children are raised in a happy and secure environment and they can become future leaders of tomorrow. Today with us, we have Diane Berger. Diane holds a master's in public administration from the University of New Mexico. She's a PCI certified parent coach. She was an associate producer on the documentary Everyone's Business, Protecting Our Children. That sounds interesting. She's taught parenting classes and volunteered for numerous family-centered agencies, including the New Mexico Child Abuse and Neglect Citizens Review Board. She and her Kids Empowered co-founder, Sheila Giannone, started presenting the Child Help Speak Up, Be Safe program in 2017. And with the help of a dedicated team of volunteers, they've reached hundreds of children with empowering education. Most importantly, she's an active mom to 2 school-age daughters. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I just so admire the work that you do. So welcome. Today you're here with us to discuss empowering kids to speak up against abuse, neglect, and bullying. And you and your partner are doing incredible things, especially during these very dangerous times, unfortunately. So tell us about your passion for children and families.
I guess it started kind of around college. With every story I heard about child maltreatment, we all hear those stories in the news, or just from, in our community. I just get more and more flabbergasted that child abuse is a normal part of our society. It's illegal, and yet it continues in these outrageous numbers, generation after generation. So over the years, through my research and experience, it's just become increasingly clear that the foundation for a healthy, thriving society is a community that's full of safe and loving homes, with parents who enter parenthood with intention and information on how to raise kids effectively and safely. We simply aren't going to be able to solve the majority of our society's problems until we can significantly reduce adverse childhood experiences. So along with my job as mom of 2 kids, preventing child abuse is always going to be my top priority.
That's amazing. I love how you just said about stepping into parenthood with intention, right? Because unfortunately, quite often, it's an afterthought.
Yeah.
If it's a thought at all.
Right.
So I love the way you arm individuals, you arm parents with that thought. Tell us about Kids Empowered.
So we've been around a few years, but we're still a pretty small, relatively new grassroots program. My partner, Sheila, had this idea, that there's a lot of services for kids after they've been abused. There's a lot of services for parents, but there's really nothing in our community, at least, that reaches kids and helps kids prevent child abuse and to keep themselves safe. So we decided to just start it up in our own community. We try to reach kids wherever they are, schools or community centers, churches. Right now, we focus all our efforts on elementary school age kids. We hope to expand that to older kids at some point. But we teach them to recognize, prevent, and stop all forms of child abuse, neglect, and bullying.
Fantastic. What are some of the programs? How do you go about breaking what you've mentioned to me on a previous conversation as the normalization of abuse?
Yeah, so a lot of kids who are being abused, they don't realize that what's happening to them is wrong. Maybe they think it happens to all kids, or they think it's just normal for their family. Or they've been told, we don't talk about what happens in our family. So we help them understand the differences in behaviors that are okay and those that are potentially abusive. And if it's abusive behavior, that means you go tell a safe grown-up. and we help them realize what a safe grown-up is and help them identify at least 2 safe adults in their life that they can go to when they're being abused or when they're just confused or scared or have questions.
Diane, you mentioned elementary school children and teenagers. What are the different types of abuse that you see within each demographic, and how do they differ?
I mean, the kids who are most at risk for abuse statistically are babies. So the younger you are, the more at risk you are, and then on up the risk drops. But as we all know, just intuitively, kids who have trouble speaking or who aren't old enough to speak, those are the most vulnerable. Which is why it's been a challenge for us to reach kids who are under the age of 5. We have done some preschool programs, but it seems to be most effective in that elementary school age range. And then teenagers, they start to experience relationship abuse. And then, they need to learn education on like consent and more stuff about how to protect themselves in a more grown-up way. Whereas kids, it's like, it's in a more age-appropriate way for their level.
That makes sense. And I would think also for the older teenagers, it would be a lot about human trafficking as well.
Yes.
Being safe.
Yeah, even starting as young as 10 or 11, we start to want to make sure that kids learn about how dangerous it can be to, especially online. That's where we care about stranger danger, right? We know that historically we've taught kids about stranger danger, but really it's people kids know and maybe even love who are most at risk to abuse them. But online, yes, it's definitely strangers, and we talk about that in our lessons as well.
Right. So it's stranger danger, and it's not such stranger danger. It's, the people that we trust, our caregivers, perhaps.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, but it exists. So tell me, what kind of trends have you seen during the pandemic?
So the heightened stress, school closures, loss of income, social isolation, all those things have increased the risk for child abuse and neglect. We do know that reports of abuse and neglect dropped during school closures because school personnel weren't as able to spot the abuse in the home. And they are actually one of the biggest groups who end up reporting the abuse. So that was scary. Those drops didn't mean that it wasn't happening. It meant that it wasn't getting reported. And we also know that while visits to the ER dropped, the ones that did come in were more severe and required hospitalization.
So what do you think the most important thing is that parents need to know, that parents need to be aware of?
In order to keep their kids safe, I would say a close, open relationship. So this means like a parent or caretaker who makes time each day to really talk with their child and let them know all about, let the kid explain all about their favorite video game, tell stories from your own childhood, go outside, play, just really spend time together without your phone. And if you're deciding between cleaning something or getting some work done or playing with your child, if you haven't done that yet today, then choose the latter because it's always going to be worth it. And by an open relationship, I mean one where the child feels safe being themselves and comfortable being themselves around the parent. So one thing I try to work on is taking a little moment before I react to anything that my kids say or do that I don't like. Because any kind of negative reaction, even to little things, signals to them that, if mom's going to freak out about this little thing that I did, spilling paint or not getting some of my homework done, imagine how she's going to react if I tell her what my stepdad is doing to me. So if you want them to be able to talk to you, we need to curb our reactions. We need to take a moment, act like the adult, and respond thoughtfully rather than reacting even to little things. And that'll help build the trust and serve as a protector from abuse.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on that one. I, throughout the years, have always encouraged my kids to come to me and tell me anything. And sometimes it was a little too much that they would tell. But, I'm saying that, in a joking kind of way.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they knew that they could come and tell me anything. And that was the most important thing, that they weren't afraid of what, whether it was the judgment or, what have you. Because then when there would be, God forbid, in a crisis, they could come to us, right, and tell us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I know that previously you've been a parental coach and a child coach. So what are some of the characteristics that you think that you bring from that into working with different, I guess, target populations? Like how, first, I guess, what are the different populations you worked with? And then what are the skills that you think that you bring?
Yeah, so parent coaching tends to draw parents who, come from a place of privilege generally, and almost always they are great parents. They're just, insecure or nervous or just need some support or help from a coach. So, that's pretty different than the target population that I want to reach, which is these really vulnerable families who, really lack resources and skills and support in order to keep their kids safe. So I've wanted to, adjust my time and my volunteer efforts towards the most vulnerable kids and families.
I think that's amazing. What are some of the skills that you've learned that you now apply to families? How do you help them with this great background that you have?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're really only working with the kids. So, it's just my own experience as a mom with, the the child development, and then just, learning through education. That's a huge part of it, is when parents and coaches have reasonable expectations for kids. When you understand what a child at a certain age is supposed to be behaving like, what's in the normal range, then you can decide whether to be concerned and address it, or whether to just be like, this too shall pass. I'm going to ignore this behavior and try to really focus on what my kid is doing right. So we try to encourage parents to follow what's called a nurtured heart approach. There's a curriculum out there called the nurtured heart approach that really encourages parents and teachers and all adults to really focus on the good things that kids are doing, or even just when they're not misbehaving, when they're just quietly, calmly drawing or doing the things that they're supposed to do. We don't tend to give that a lot of attention. But if we start to really praise and give energy to just when they're not misbehaving, and very little attention and downplay the misbehaviors, then they're less likely to engage in those behaviors because they're not getting the attention for it.
I think that's a wonderful point, because we speak to the behaviors that we want to see more of.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fabulous point. So we're encouraging, it's positive reinforcement.
Yes.
Essentially.
And not just with like reward charts and gifts and, kind of empty praise, like good job, but really describing, oh, I see you're using a red crayon to color the roof of the house. If you're really noticing those details, they're like, wow, they're really paying attention. I guess I'll keep doing this.
Right. Engaging your child in conversation and in those details.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's just joined us, you're watching the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. Our show is A Better Future Starts Here. And we have Diane Berger of Kids Empowered. And we're speaking with her today about her amazing program. So if we can talk a little bit more about the programs that you offer at Kids Empowered, why don't you just, describe a little bit for our listeners and our audience?
Sure. So we use trained and experienced and caring volunteers who, go through a training online through Child Help, and we use their curriculum, Speak Up, Be Safe, to teach our lessons. And there are 2 lessons for each kid, usually separated by a week or 2. They're 30 to 45-minute lessons, and they're age appropriate. So, for the younger kids, we use language and conversation that they can better understand. And we do a little drawing activity where they draw the different kinds of abuse that we describe, again, in an age appropriate way. So, their drawing for abuse to private body parts is a drawing of their swimsuit, because we explained that their private body parts are the parts of their body they cover with their swimsuit. And then, we have kind of a script or a curriculum for older kids as well, 3rd grade through 5th graders. We try to reach kids wherever they are, community centers or schools. That can be a challenge. So we, appreciate any help locally in finding venues where kids gather, because it's hard to bring them to us. It's hard to get families to commit to bringing their kid to a lesson. But if we can reach them where they already are, then that's the most efficient way to do it.
That's awesome. I like the Kids Speak Up, Be Safe.
Yeah.
Great program. That's childhelp.org.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the materials that Kids Empowered uses, correct?
Yes, the curriculum we use is Child Help Speak Up, Be Safe. Yeah, and there's a script for the facilitators to teach the kids, and then there's also materials for teachers if they want to reinforce any of the lessons that we taught, and then some take-home materials about child abuse, about keeping kids safe for parents as well.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to hear a little bit about the documentary, Everyone's Business, Protecting Our Children. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a few years ago. There's a local producer where I am, Chris Schuler, who does a lot of documentaries on stuff related to youth and kids. So I proposed that we did one on child abuse prevention. So you can find it on YouTube, Everyone's Business, Protecting Our Children. It's about a half-hour documentary. And they talk about like the problem, how much it costs society, how much it costs each child, each victim. And then they talk about some possible solutions, including home visiting, family planning, parenting classes, and really just community-minded efforts. So, if we can help people with housing and job training and just family stabilization, then they're better able to keep their kids safe as well.
What I love about that is that it takes a village. They are actually, it sounds like they're including the village,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're making this a little bit about everybody. It's everybody's responsibility. Everybody's responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, it affects us all. I mean, some people think, well, this is just kind of happening across town. This is happening to, those poor kids over there. But it really does impact us all because number one, we're paying for it with our taxes. It costs the US about $2 trillion a year. And we're part of a community. So, when you go to the grocery store, if there's a crime that's happening, maybe that robbery is happening by someone who had a traumatic childhood, had a lot of adverse childhood experiences. If your son or daughter ends up getting engaged to somebody who's got a lot of trauma in their childhood, that's going to show up in your family as well. Your kids might make friends with kids who've had child abuse or other adverse childhood experiences. That's going to impact your family. So we can't hide from it. We can't pretend that it doesn't affect us. It affects us all.
Tell me a little bit more about that $2 trillion that it costs the government. Can you break that down? I'm not asking you to do
yeah.
But help us to understand like that cost, how it manifests itself.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't know the detailed numbers, but it manifests itself in healthcare costs. So physical and mental health care. Child abuse does in fact impact even your heart, your cardiovascular health. It impacts, obviously, if there's physical injuries. Then, of course, it impacts mental health, depression, anxiety, substance use. And then we pay for it with, social service type things, welfare type programs. If, those kinds of kids have trouble succeeding in school, have trouble graduating, more trouble, they're at greater risk of not attaining a good job when they're adults, of having a healthy family themselves. So those costs show up usually in the form of social services that we end up paying for.
That is unbelievably enlightening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So what would you say to parents who maybe don't want their children to participate in certain lessons because they prefer to teach this material at home?
Yeah. I would say I love that you're teaching this life-saving information at home. It's a parent's number one job to keep their kids safe. And again, historically, that's meant about stranger danger, but we know that the greatest risk to kids is from adults or older kids that the kid actually knows and maybe even loves. So yes, every parent should be discussing these topics on a regular basis in an age-appropriate way throughout their kid's childhood. It's not a one-time conversation. And then I'd say, it can only help your kid to hear this information more often and from various sources, because kids learn in all kinds of ways. And it's possible that they're going to hear something in our lessons that they comprehend in a different way than your conversations at home. And this could make the difference when it comes to keeping them safe. So, as long as it's done in an evidence-based, age-appropriate way, I really don't think there can be too much information when it comes to
that makes so much sense, because there are times when I'll tell my kids something and they're like, oh, that's just mom saying it.
Yep.
Like, I'm just nagging.
Yep.
And when somebody else says it, it's like, oh, wait a minute. This, maybe we need to pay some serious attention to this.
That's right. When they see their peers paying attention, and we ask questions all throughout. It's a very interactive lesson. So when they hear their peers answering the questions, they're like, oh, I guess I should know this information, or I guess this is important because they seem to know it.
Right. Do you ever have a situation where a child might reveal something like right then and there, and then the other children are like, oh, and then, you have to alert certain people or authorities?
Kind of, yes. So what we tend to hear are what we call red flags. So we don't generally hear like full out, I am being abused, everyone raise my hand. But we hear like they say something, that a step parent or a parent is doing something kind of strange to them, or they're being bullied at school. They'll tell a little quick story about it. And so we go, oh, okay, we'll follow up with you afterwards about that. So we usually have the staff member or the teacher follow up with the child. And, if they do determine that this is in fact something that we need to report, then the teacher or the staff member will go ahead and make that report.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That there's somebody there to, prompt these questions and to find out and to initiate.
Yep.
Any type of success stories, don't really know how to quantify, but
Right.
anything to think of that you could share?
Yes. Yeah, you're right. It is hard to quantify, because when you're doing prevention, how do you know that you prevented it? Because it never happened. But we do know that we're making a difference, when we're during the presentations, when kids are saying something that they learned that they didn't know before, if we're talking about neglect, that's kind of something that most people have never heard of. In fact, it's the most common kind of child abuse, but most people don't really realize what it is, especially kids. So it's challenging to explain to them, but they go, oh, okay, I didn't realize that was wrong. The other day, one of the older kids said, after we described what child abuse was, they said, oh, wow, this really needs to stop. I was like, yes, I'm so proud of you. You're right. And then, we have the kids identify 2 safe adults. And the other day, a few of the kids named one of the staff members in the room, one of the community center staff members, and she got tears in her eyes and put her hand to her heart. And you could tell how honored she felt to be their safe adult.
That's beautiful.
And really just, overall, my commitment is renewed during each lesson when you can see how carefully they're paying attention. And when they're answering questions correctly, you're like, okay, you're getting this, you're understanding this, you're listening. And we know at that point that we've planted a seed, and that's going to grow in the form of confidence and self-respect and respect for others. And if ever needed, the courage to speak up about abuse.
Exactly. Which is our theme, empowering kids to speak up.
Yep.
I have a question that I would believe would be on many parents' minds. So parents are busy. This is a busy world. They're working 24/7. They're making ends meet. They're cooking, they're cleaning, they're food shopping, the responsibilities of parenthood. Sometimes they're allowing their kids to be on the video games for extended periods of time. My question to you is, where is the fine line when it comes to the issue of neglect that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you mean in terms of like if they're just kind of leaving their kids to fend for themselves, they're on the screens a lot while parents are working or getting errands done?
Right. Where's that fine line?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. How does the parent know, or how does the the police know?
Like, how would a parent know? Like, how would a parent say, you know what? Like, here I am thinking that the video games are babysitting my child, but this is actually bordering on neglect. Like, how would a parent? I'm all about helping people to self-realize, right? To break their own cycles.
Yeah.
So somebody watching this, how would they know if they say, you know what? I really need to step it up in that area. So what is that fine line that all of a sudden tips the scale over to neglect?
I think it's kind of what you just alluded to. I think if the parent has a sense that it's a bit too much screen time, or I'm not really spending enough time with my kid, if you have that sense, you're probably right. And so just make a small step make a change. Let's cut out a half hour of that and use that time to talk and play and be with your kid. And then reevaluate that sense and see if you feel better. And if not, make some more changes in that way.
Beautiful, beautiful, perfect. Thank you so much. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, Diane, or to Kids Empowered, let's flash that again. Do you also have a Facebook group? Are you on social media that you can be followed?
Yeah, we're on Twitter and Facebook under Kids Empowered, and our website is kidsempowered.org, as you see on the screen. So there you can find out just more about our program, and we're always looking for, locally, we're looking for more volunteer facilitators that we can get trained and get to observing lessons and start teaching them themselves. And then we do take donations, even though we have a fiscal sponsor, we're not our own 501c3 yet. But all the funding goes directly to programming right now because almost all of us are volunteers. We only have one paid staff member.
Wow.
Yeah.
And everybody's volunteer. Congratulations.
That's
really, truly wonderful. Everybody's heart is in the right place.
Yeah.
And of course, can you just tell us, just for everybody to hear, the more volunteers you have, the more of what it is that you can do.
The more kids we can reach. And therefore, potentially the more lives we can save. We may never know that we've saved a life, but you know that you're making a difference. Again, when you're in those lessons and you're teaching, you can see it on their faces and you can feel it in your heart that they're getting it, and you could be saving a life.
And God knows.
Yes. Yes.
God knows. So thank you so much, Diane Berger of Kids Empowered. You and your partner Sheila are doing amazing, incredible things. Wait, I see one comment coming up. Julia is watching, and she's saying, thank you for this valuable information. You're welcome, and thank you for listening and tuning in. We appreciate the support. So thank you again, Diane. So to our audience, if you or someone are doing incredible things in your community or just simply making a difference in the lives of families, children, please reach out to us at info@americanspcc.org. That's info@americanspcc.org. Even if you'd like to just contribute to the conversation or have an idea of what you'd like to see on an upcoming show. Additionally, we would love for everybody to not only visit Kids Empowered, but also go to the American SPCC website and download the Happy Child app. I can't say enough great things about this app because what it does is it helps you to direct your child to share with them experiences so that they can be happy for a lifetime, not just a fleeting moment, not just a fast fix, but really truly help your child become a very mentally adjusted, happy adult as they grow up. So again, thank you so much, Diane Berger, for being here with us today. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
More people like you and Sheila are needed in this world. So if anybody wants to reach out to Diane and Sheila and volunteer at Kids Empowered, let's do this. So let's make a difference together. Visit us at americanspcc.org to learn how you can help and to visit our resource library and to see more podcasts like this one. And remember, a better future starts here.
Thank you.
Thank you.